Hey there, it's Anand from LocalOps. I'm going to show you a brief tour on how LocalOps works. LocalOps is a cloud deployment automation tool to make private SaaS deployments easy. Uh, Say you're building a B2B SaaS service and your customers don't want to sign up at your website, but instead want to run your application in their cloud environment. You've got to figure out a lot to make such deployments, right? So you've got to figure out how to connect to a third-party cloud account, deploy your application, and monitor these deployments remotely. Make sure they're kept up to date and so on, right? So instead of figuring out all of this and writing in-house provisioning scripts to do it all, you could use LocalOps to automate the process end to end to make private SaaS deployments easy. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So first things first, you've got to sign up for an account in LocalOps. And after you sign up, you would land on this dashboard where you will be shown the apps that you have, the environments that you have, the connections that you have. Now, apps are your applications, your products, right? So you've got to package your application as a Docker image or a Kubernetes Helm chart to use LocalOps, right? So we have written some excellent guides on how to package your app as a Docker image or a Kubernetes Helm chart. You could go to docs.localops.co to view them all. To create an app, you could come here and add an app, give it a name. Let's say you're giving it a name like Acme Studio, continue, and you've got to point us at the registry where you've stored the Kubernetes Helm chart. Now, the reason why we want your application in a Kubernetes Helm chart format is because we create deployments using Kubernetes on a target cloud account. So it has to be a containerized app, a Helm chart that we want to sort of deploy, right? So once you create an app, uh, you can start making releases. So releases are versions of your application. So the challenge in making private SaaS deployment is to ensure uh, customers are in the safe versions with no necessary security updates applied, if not for future updates, right? So you've got to have some versioning going on in your application with version numbers attached. So you could follow any format that fits your team. You could make releases from here, right? So you can create a new release from this place. You can create add new release, and you can give your app and version number and so on, right? So that is apps and releases. Next comes connections. So connections are credentials to cloud accounts, right? So it could be your cloud account or your customer's cloud account. You could connect to those cloud accounts through connections and credentials saved here, right? So we have written documentation on how to get these credentials. So you can go here and find the instructions on how to get credentials, say AWS account, and get the IAM credentials here, right? Once the credentials are obtained, you can come here, add a new connection, and save them, right? So credentials are encrypted before they get saved. You could map the purpose of the connections, whether to create just sandbox environments or production environments or both. You could also say whether these are internally owned or externally owned. So, okay, that's connections. So you could create as many connections as you want. Typically, you would have one connection for every customer, right? So once apps, releases, and connections are created, you could start creating app environments. So we take an environment-based approach in deploying applications to a target cloud account. So app environments, you can think of them as copies of your app running on the target cloud account. LocalOps provisions necessary infrastructure in the cloud you connect, bring up a Kubernetes cluster, and deploy your app on top. So that's the reason why we want apps in Kubernetes Helm chart format so that we can deploy applications easily. So we can create app environments from this section by clicking on Create App Environment. You could say whether it's a private SaaS delivery or a public SaaS production environment or a sandbox environment. You can give it a name. It will be ideally your customer's name. Let's say Alpha Care or Alpha Health. This is just a hypothetical name. You could choose a template. You could choose the app that you want to deploy. You could choose the version that you want to deploy, say the latest version, and you could pick the cloud connection. So this would be your customer's cloud connection. and you could pick the region, say Frankfurt, Germany, right? And if you want to apply a license token, for example, like you could give it here as Helm values, and you can read it in your Helm chart, right? And apply it in your application. You could pretty much give anything here, so as the configuration for your application. Next, you can review the details quickly and start creating an app environment, right? So this process will typically take around 15 to 18 minutes. So during this time, LocalOps connects to the given cloud account, provisions the cloud infrastructure, right? And as the last step, it will start deploying an application. Okay. So once the environment is ready, we'll get a unique URL to access the application. Now, until the environment is ready, we can see an environment that I made ready for this demo. So there is an environment that's already running in our AWS account, right? So you could see that the app environment is healthy. So when creating an app, we also collect a health endpoint so that we probe it internally to make sure to check whether the application is running fine, right? If so, we mark it as healthy, right? And then, like I said, each app environment gets their own unique URL, so you can go to that URL and see the Django app that I talked about as a sample app that we've kept in each account, right? Um, so so you could use the application on this URL. You could pass on this application to your customer, and so on, right? If they're not okay with the domain, you could attach a custom domain by asking the domain that they would prefer and configuring it here, right? Now, this environment is running this sample app on its version 1. It got last deployed today, and it's running inside a VPC in AWS with 3 subnets, private and 3 public subnets, on 2 T3 medium instances, right? So all of this infrastructure was automatically provisioned by LocalOps and the EKS cluster before deploying an application on top, right? So all of this is fully automated. Now, encryption is also enabled by default in each app environment, both at rest and transit. So by rest, we mean all the EBS volumes that we create are encrypted by default, and in transit, meaning that the URL is SSL powered, there's a SSL certificate running provisioned for the URL. So this SSL certificate is auto-renewing, and it's also provisioned within the same target cloud account. Okay, so that is the basics of an app environment. So to make deployments, to make regular updates to the environments, right? So you come here and click on deploy new version, right? So you can deploy any new version that you have for the application. So right now the application is in 1.0.0. As you can see here, it's 1.0.0, right? So let's just create a new to-do so that we verify whether a deployment is successful. So just say pick up grocery from the local supermarket, right? Let's just create a to-do application. We've created a to-do. Now we're going to deploy a new version of the application on the same app environment, right? So we can come here, instead of version 1, we can go to version, let's say 1.0.2, and then deploy now, right? So what happens is that we are remotely applying a release on the Kubernetes cluster, on the application that is running inside the Kubernetes cluster, right? So this process will take typically under a minute to complete, and it's going to complete in some time, right? Once complete, when you refresh this page, it's going to say 1.0.2. So we can also monitor the deployment either in this page or centrally in deployment section. You can come in and see that, or you can go to the environment itself and then go to deployments and see that this is in progress, right? So this is going to take a few more seconds to complete, so we can wait for a few seconds. Right, so deployment is complete. It just said it completed successfully, so I'm just going to refresh the page. Boom. So the app got deployed and then the version was changed to 1.0.2. Now, all the actions that I did are recorded in audit log, so anybody can see who did what in your account across app environments and anything. So you can go back to the app environment and you can see that the status is changed back to healthy, right? So we just made a deployment on the app environment. We can make n number of deployments on any app environment through LocalOps dashboard, right? Now next comes, how do you monitor stuff? Like how do you see what's running inside a Kubernetes cluster? Like do you have access to it? Yes. So you go to shell and sort of you can read instructions here and sort of get access to the Kubernetes cluster, right? So the first step would be to install our CLI. So we have a CLI that's available, so which you can run with this. So you just deploy the CLI here, install the CLI here in your local dev machine. It's going to copy the CLI into your path for which it's asking the password. So I'm just going to keep the password here and it's just copied it. Now we just need to copy another command to set up the Kubernetes context in your dev machine. So once it's done, our kubectl commands would work to access this specific cluster, right? So I'm just going to give, just going to see all the resources that are running inside the Kubernetes cluster, right? So it's showing all the Kubernetes resources that are running. As you can see, the application is running in its own namespace. The backend app, the frontend app, the gateway, and all that, right? So these are the components of the Django app that we deployed, and those are running. Now that's one way of accessing, what's running inside the Kubernetes cluster remotely. There's also Prometheus Grafana stack installed by default in each app environment, right? Say you want to see logs of the running application or see CPU memory metrics of the application. So these the Grafana stack is installed by default in each app environment, and you can access them on a unique URL. Now, if you notice, this Grafana URL is just a subdomain of the original app environment's URL. So if you go here, you see LOCA 212. If you go here, you would see that just monitor.loca 212. So it's very easy to remember that way. So you can just prefix monitor subdomain, you can access the Grafana dashboard. Pretty convenient for your team, right? So you could go here and just visit the Grafana dashboard. And you can copy the credentials from here, and you can access the Grafana dashboard that way. Yep, you're in. You can start seeing logs of your application this way. So we have installed Loki by default in the app environment. So you could go here, explore, pick up the Loki data source, choose the namespace where your application is running, right? And then you can click run query, and boom, you're able to see all the logs that are being printed out in the namespace that is running your application. That includes your backend, frontend, Postgres, anything that you see running in that namespace. Of course, this is a typical Grafana installation. You can filter out anything that you want by date, namespace, anything, right? Next comes CPU memory metrics. So you can see all the built-in dashboards. You could see the workload dashboard that is organized by namespace. So you could just pick the namespace, it's already pre-selected, and you could pick the last 1 hour and see all the CPU utilization of each of your services, memory utilization of each service, and so on. Now, all of this you're able to do it remotely on a Grafana installation that's sitting right inside the cluster where the application is running, right? So that's how easy it is to monitor applications, that are running remotely in a third-party cloud account, right? So that's monitoring. So there's a lot more that I can cover, but since we're running short of time, so we could organize a personalized demo if you want. You can go to our website and book a demo. But here we are. We've come to the end of the demo, and you can create as many app environments as you want. Typically for each of your private SaaS customers. You can deploy them in as much as you want from the LocalOps dashboard, right? Um, App environments are not limited to private SaaS delivery. You could also create public SaaS production environments in your AWS account. Your QA team can also create test environments or performance benchmarking environments in your internal AWS accounts, right? So there's no limit on what you can create app environments for, although things are slightly tuned for private SaaS delivery, right? So it's a pretty convenient tool. Hope you liked the demo. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, just write to us at help@localops.co or hello@localops.co. Both works. Thanks for your time. Yeah, see you.